And Gidi Grinstein gave a speech at the Herzliya conference, the same conference at which Martin Kramer advocated measures to prevent births within a specific ethnic, religious, or cultural group, aka genocide. Gidi Grinstein gave a PowerPoint presentation in which he advocated to the Israeli government that it activate its intelligence services against these hubs of delegitimization. Didn't specify what action it would take, but they used two words: sabotage and attack. Those, last time I checked, were not very friendly words. But this is serious because they're, in effect, inciting the Israeli government to use its intelligence services to sabotage lawful peace, justice, equality groups engaging in constitutionally guaranteed free speech and association in the United States, Canada, Europe, and other countries. And I wonder what other country could get away with that and also do it with tax-free funds sent from the United States. Of course, in a sense, it reflects, I think, the climate in this country over the past few years, where activities we once thought we could take for granted are under threat. I think we have to be vigilant, but without being alarmist, because I think, in a sense, our movement is much bigger and stronger than anything they can throw at it. And really, there's nothing new here. These tactics have been going on for years. And the strength of this movement is it's growing, and it's growing at the grassroots. It's growing among the young people who came in their hundreds to Hampshire College, who went in their hundreds to Cairo for the Gaza Freedom March, who came to Turkey last May when I was there for a conference of NGOs of the Islamic world working for peace and justice in Palestine. And there were young people who came from Malaysia and Indonesia and Africa and all over the world, people who we don't necessarily see and meet in our movement, but who are also very active. But the key point that I think is where I want to bring in the comparison with South Africa is that at the crucial moment where the anti-apartheid movement gained so much momentum, was on every college campus. It became sort of a liability for any member of Congress not to support sanctions against South Africa. At that moment, the situation in South Africa itself was, in terms of the military balance, unchanged. There was never a moment in which the white regime's hold on power was physically threatened. And when I was doing my research on this, I came across a story about F.W. de Klerk when he took the presidency as the last president of apartheid South Africa. One of the first things he did was he gathered the military leaders and the generals around and said, how long can we go on? And they said, we can go on indefinitely. Nobody can challenge us militarily. The ANC, its military wing is very weak, has very limited ability to attack us. Nobody else can attack us, and so we could go on indefinitely. But that's not the problem. The problem is the price we pay in legitimacy, the price we pay in external pressure. And that's what got them to change strategy. So for all the overwhelming force being used against Gaza, for all of the horror being done, none of that contradicts the notion that our power is growing and that Israel's is diminishing. Its power to destroy, its power to harm, its power to besiege is unchanged. But its power to do so with impunity is what is diminishing. And that is the important point. That brings me to what I want to talk about in terms of the future, in terms of closing with some thoughts about the future. The first time I came here to speak was when my book had just come out. It's a book proposing a one-state solution. And I remember at that time, and this wasn't a new idea, it was an idea that had a long and venerable history in the Palestinian movement. But I wanted to bring it back for myself. I had to rediscover it because I had been bamboozled for too long by this whole two-state solution mirage, and I wanted to bring it to the generation of activists who were, I guess, born when I was in college. It's kind of amazing to and I remember at that time, I mean, I met such a, you know, there were always friends who were very encouraging, who thought this was a wonderful idea. But it was amazing, you know, I got a lot of blank stares, a lot more than I get now. And I get, you know, I got a lot of people who said this is a wonderful idea, but it's just very utopian. How could you ever see it coming about? In terms of those in power, the peace process industry, as I call them, the people who kind of control the official discourse on what is and isn't a pragmatic and realistic plan, they simply ignored it, and ignored it very studiously and deliberately. Made sure that I or anyone else who talked about the one-state solution was frozen out of any discussion and was given no legitimacy and no attention. And it was very much like what Gandhi said. First they ignore you, then they ridicule you, then they fight you, and then you win. And they did ignore us, they did ridicule us, now they're fighting us. And now you see an incredible fight back, an incredible effort to discredit this idea. And the words of the Root Institute are significant. The harbinger when a two-state solution no longer commands a consensus. And we've reached that moment where everywhere I go, people say, okay, I can see how the two-state solution is no longer realistic. It's a joke. What you have now in the West Bank is basically already a Bantustan with collaborationist Palestinian leaders and U.S. armed and trained collaborator forces doing the work of the occupation on its behalf. But what comes next? And of course, one of the biggest objections I get is, well, all right, we're ready now. Palestinians are talking about a one-state solution. Activists are ready to support Palestinians if they want a one-state solution, but what about Israeli Jews? And this is the objection we face. Well, you know, be realistic. 90% or more of Israeli Jews are against this. You'll never convince them. So I kept getting this question, so I went back to look, and I asked myself the question. We now know what happened in South Africa with the end of apartheid as a political system and its replacement with one person, one vote in South Africa. Yes, it didn't produce utopia in South Africa. It produced a country plagued by all the problems that other countries in Africa are plagued with and that our country is plagued with in the form of enduring structural racism, which isn't simply abolished by changing the law. But nevertheless, the end of political apartheid was an enormous achievement which people sacrificed their lives for many decades.